Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. This fight with Mariusz Wach, it shapes as the most pivotal moment of Jarrell Miller's heavyweight career, as he looks to continue his unbeaten run and make a challenge for a title. And that shot at glory, it might be closer than he realizes, with Eddie Hearn, the matchroom promoter, dangling the prospect of an Anthony Joshua fight should Miller beat Wach convincingly. So more on that in a moment, but first, I'll get to a clip of Miller from the press conference, then I'll cover off the weights, because Miller is actually lighter on the scale, and later a few thoughts on how I think this plays out.
I ain't got no speech made like some of these guys. I'm gonna take my glasses off though. All I can say is this. I haven't ate a cheeseburger in 2 months. Yeah, clap it up. I am going to kick his behind. Big shout out to my boy Mike. He's been on my team for this first time for this camp. At my house every day, cooking breakfast and making sure I have no Snickers or Doodles in my gym bag. No cheeseburgers. My publicist Alvina, my trainer Harry Sosa, one of my big mentors, Chinchu. It was a phenomenal camp. Every camp, it has ups and downs, and it was one of those camps where we had to push through. It was rough, and definitely dropped some weight. You'll see the number tomorrow. I feel amazing. I feel awesome. I feel blessed. Thanks, Peter Nelson, HBO, Eddie Hearn from Matchroom, my partner, Salida Promotion, Demetri Salida. It's been a long road, man. I started my career at 14, really, and turned pro kickboxing at 18, turned professional boxing at 19, and it has not been easy. I've not given no silver spoon. I wasn't given the Olympics and all that stuff. I had to earn every step, every inch by grit, blood, sweat, and tears. So if anybody tell you this is just luck, there ain't no such thing as luck in my book.
And I can actually believe that Jarrell Miller hasn't had a cheeseburger in 2 months. He's weighed in at 283 pounds. Yes, that's right, 283. And for him, that's a really good weight when you consider he was 298 pounds for his last fight out against Gerald Washington just a couple of months ago. So he's obviously been putting in that work, putting in that strict nutrition, which at 298 to 283, he's obviously been doing quite well. We know he likes his food. Mariusz Wach, meanwhile, he has tipped the scales at a slightly disappointing 268 pounds. I mean, you might be going, well, Miller's 283, he's 15 pounds less. But for someone like Wach, I mean, I was expecting him to come in around about 260. That's a better fighting weight for him. He's looked a lot better when he's been in the high 250s, early 260s. So he is definitely fleshier than I was expecting him to come in. And in terms of Miller's weight, coming in lighter is definitely going to help him, because Wach is a very tough guy. He's got a chin like granite, so there's a real possibility that this fight goes into the later rounds. And carrying 283 pounds versus 298 in that situation is definitely preferable. Dropping some of the excess weight may also prove beneficial in other areas than stamina. He might be a touch quicker with his hands and feet. He might be able to get out of the way of some of the punches he may well have otherwise eaten at the heavier weight. And we know Miller is a guy who likes to come forward. He likes to throw a lot of punches, especially for a heavyweight. He does throw quite a high volume of punches. So being a bit lighter is definitely going to aid in that strategy. I would expect him to fight similar to the way that he fought Gerald Washington, where he was relentlessly coming forward. So 283, definitely going to help with that one. I said in a previous video on this fight that I did favour Miller to win, and most likely on points. But with Wach coming in closer to 270 rather than 260, it's a bit of a concern. And couple this with the fact that, his form, it has been tapering off in the past couple of years. He definitely seems to be at the tail end of the prime of his career. I mean, maybe he is ripe for the picking. I mean, punch resistance, sometimes that can desert a boxer. But I mean, it's too early to say just yet, but we'll know a lot from this fight. But Miller can't take anything for granted. And in some respects, I think he is going to have to pace himself. I mean, otherwise, Wach might be able to get into the fight later on, mount a comeback in the later rounds, and possibly do some damage. So Miller, even at 283, coming forward, throwing a lot of punches, that's really tough work. You've really got to have a good engine on you. And we know he's got a good engine, but will the stamina, will it be there in the later rounds? Will it be there? That is a good question. I mean, Wach himself, he can crack. So Miller has to be really careful that he's not going to be walking onto too many right hands. There were a couple of times in that fight with Gerald Washington where Miller was hit and hurt when marching forward and walking onto some shots. I still think a points win to Miller is the most likely result, just based on what I've seen, the weigh-in, previous history of both these guys. But there is a chance that he could do something, that no one else has done before, and that's stop Mariusz Wach with a knockout. And a proper knockout, not a stoppage based on cuts, like the Povetkin one. For Wach, though, I am really interested to see his strategy. What is he actually going to bring in here? He knows what Miller will do. And we know that coming in at a relatively heavy weight of 268, we're probably not going to see him sort of employing a back foot game that sees him dancing around the ring. It's more than likely he's going to be meeting Miller at times and probably head on quite a bit of the time. I think it's definitely going to be one of those fights where both guys are there to be hit. And often. So it has the potential to be a really torrid encounter. But I think some of that does depend on what Mariusz Wach is bringing to the table here. A lot of people are saying he's a bit of a faded force. But the guy, he can still box and he's got a good punch. And I think we probably will expect, some good viewing from this fight. If only because Jarrell Miller, he's an entertaining fighter. And Eddie Hearn, he has told BoxingScene.com, see the link in the description, a good performance in the step-up fight is a key for Miller. He says, with someone like Jarrell Miller, I'm praying that he is the real deal because he can be a major asset to the division. He can be an Anthony Joshua opponent as well. And I think after this fight, he's going to get a final eliminator for a world title anyway. So I think he's 2 fights away from challenging for a world heavyweight title. Saturday and then one more. But it may come even quicker. If he makes a statement on Saturday, he could be Joshua's next opponent. He knows what's on the line and he's looked good. He's trimmed down and lost weight. He's taking it seriously. And it's a big night for him. And that's true. It is a very big night for Jarrell Miller. So the website, it also said, Hearn clarified Thursday that Miller hasn't signed a promotional contract with Matchroom Boxing USA, as Miller mentioned Wednesday. He has agreed to work with Miller's co-promoters Dimitri Salita and Greg Cohen on the Wach fight and Miller's next bout, which would make it easier to make a Joshua Miller match at Barclays Center in 2018. So that's some pretty interesting stuff there. I mean, a lot is on the line for Miller, and clearly Eddie Hearn, he is establishing a potential viable option for Anthony Joshua to pursue should talks with either Joseph Parker or Deontay Wilder fail. And that just makes sense. A good business sense. He's giving himself another out, another option. But hopefully we do see a Joseph Parker fight or a Deontay Wilder fight before we see a Jarrell Miller-Anthony Joshua fight. Be disappointing if they went straight into a fight with Jarrell Miller, but sometimes them's the breaks. Your thoughts, please. Is Jarrell Miller going to walk through Wach like he's nothing? Or do you, like me, think that this will, for the most part, be a bit of a tough affair? Wach will prove to be a good opponent, but Miller should have enough to get through him. What do you make of it? Drop a comment, hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.